This is the Change Physician, episode 168.
Hey, folks. Hey, focals. Welcome back to the Change Physician podcast. This is your host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, with my amazeballs co-host, Dr. Melissa Katie, and our fantastic guest, Dr. Sonali Ruder. Sonali, fantastic to have you on the show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for asking me to join you.
All right. So we were going to explore Sonali's history in medicine, as well as what she is doing now. But if you can just give us a brief kind of overview for the listeners of what you do, where you are, and just not too long though, because we'll explore it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an emergency medicine doctor. I'm from New York, but I moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida 8 years ago. And I also am a trained chef. I went to culinary school after I became a doctor. So I work part-time in a local emergency room. And then the rest of the time I am cooking and running my food blog, which is called the Foodie Physician.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. So let's dive in, because there's some differences, obviously, being the foodie physician as well as being the ER physician here.
Yes,
but
yes.
What ultimately propelled you to go into medicine? Why did you decide that career path?
I think I just, well, what's funny is actually, both of my parents are doctors. So like growing up, that's like the first thing everybody would ask me, oh, are you going to become a doctor? Because both your parents are doctors. So I used to say the total opposite. And I'd be like, no, there's no way I want to become a doctor. But I think I just gravitated towards it naturally because I was always good in, science and math and things like that. But also like always had a creative side. So I think that probably is also why I branched off into this whole cooking thing. I like medicine. I'm good at my job, but I also needed a way to like express my creative side. So I think right now I have like the perfect balance.
Fantastic. So with that background now, do you mind if I ask what your parents' specialties were?
Yeah, my dad's an anesthesiologist actually, and my mom is a pathologist.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah. So growing up, she'd be telling us stories about her autopsies and things like that at dinner. My sister and I were like, for a while, we don't want to go into medicine at all. My sister didn't become a doctor, by the way, just me.
All right. So with that kind of background, then it would assume that you were pretty well prepared to go into medical school. Did you know what you were getting into, or did you have any challenges while you were in medical school?
I think I knew, my parents had told me stories. They actually met in medical school. They were anatomy partners first year in medical school. So I was a little bit prepared, but I don't think anything really like fully prepares you for medical school, until you actually go through it. But yeah, it's years of work and no sleep and lots of caffeine. And like I said, no one can really like truly prepare you for that unless, until you really go through it yourself.
Then why'd you choose emergency? Was that something you were gunning for at the beginning?
No, not at all. Honestly, I was one of those people that kind of liked all of my rotations, and I always liked surgery and doing procedures, but I didn't love being in the OR, honestly. So with emergency medicine, it kind of let me do everything. There's like a little bit of everything. Get to see adults, kids, women, pregnant women, everything. I get to do procedures. And then the other thing was in terms of thinking of lifestyle, I kind of like the idea of shift work. And, I don't mind being busy and running around for 12 hours in the ER. But when I come home, I just want to be home and spend time with my family. I didn't ever want to carry a pager. I didn't ever want to have to like go back into work after I'm already at home. So that was a big deal for me too, just in terms of like the schedule and the hours.
Did you think about that, not having a pager and whatnot, based on your father's profession?
Yeah, totally. Because when I was growing up, he worked at a really busy hospital in Long Island, and he used to have to go in a lot. And he did a lot of nights. He was in a private group, so he was doing a lot of nights. And then when I was in high school, I think he switched to like an ambulatory surgery center. So it was more, home by 4 or 5 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday, no weekends, no call. And it was just nice. So we got to see a lot more of him. So I think that probably, influenced my decision too.
Sure. And when you're in medical school, did you ever have any hesitation? Like you said, you don't really know till you're going through it, like what it's really like. Did you have moments where you're like, do I really want to finish? Or do you feel like you're just going to plow ahead no matter what?
definitely had those moments, but I think everybody probably has those moments in medical school, but it's kind of like, you've come so far, you have to just get through it. Cause it's like at the end, the reward will be there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I ever really fully pondered just leaving, but it is interesting though, because I do often ask myself, think about what would have happened if I discovered my passion for cooking earlier in life, like would I have gone to medical school at all, or would I finish? And I honestly don't know because the cooking is what I love and what keeps me sane at times, but I think in the long run, it worked out well, because I think the fact that I finished medical school, became a doctor, and now I'm cooking too, I can kind of like reach a larger audience with what I do. So I think it worked out well, but I do wonder what would have happened if I discovered the cooking thing earlier in life.
Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering about that, because were you cooking during medical school?
No, that's the funny thing. My friends from like college and med school are like shocked about, when I first started cooking, we're shocked about this, because I think I was on the meal plan and I was, cafeteria food the first 2 years. And then when we were doing our clinicals, I think I was just buying food all the time, or eating like frozen food, Yeah. Even in residency, same thing. I didn't in the beginning, I was just kind of living off of frozen food from Costco and buying food. I was in New York City for residency, so things are open 24 hours a day. It's really easy to get food any time of day or night. But no, I did not. I did not cook much when I was in school.
So you matched ER in New York. So that was kind of almost like going home for you.
Right. Yeah.
And were you in a 3 or 4 year program?
I was in a 3-year program, and then I did a 1-year fellowship in ultrasound, emergency ultrasound.
Okay. So while you were there in when did you decide to cook? I mean, this is bizarre to me, because
I know
residency is so busy. Like you think, okay, medical school is busy.
Right.
Residency is crazy.
Yes.
And then you decide to cook.
And then I decided to cook. I know. Well, I guess I was living on my own. I mean, I was living on my own in med school in Chicago, but there was like a cafeteria and stuff. So this was me in New York living on my own. I met my future husband at the time, so I had someone to cook for. But basically, I just started watching the Food Network. That's kind of when the Food Network was first getting popular, and Rachel Ray and all those people on TV who were saying, you can cook anything in 30 minutes. And I started cooking, and then I realized I was like good at it. And both of my parents, by the way, cooked growing up. My parents are both awesome cooks, and they cooked dinner every day growing up. So I had good role models as well. But one day I basically entered a recipe contest on the Food Network website. They were looking for the best home cooks recipes to come compete on this TV show. So I entered this contest completely on a whim, and I ended up being chosen. And I flew out to LA and I competed on this cooking show, and I didn't win, but basically that's how the whole thing started. I kind of got hooked. I thought it was really fun. I got to that little competitive side of me, really liked it as well. And then for the next 5-6 years, I basically started entering all these cooking competitions, traveling around the country, competing. And after doing that for a few years, I was like, everything I've learned about cooking is from watching TV. I want to actually learn the real fundamentals of cooking technique. So that's when I decided to go to culinary school, because I was in New York City. There are so many options for schools, the best place to be. And I enrolled in culinary school. That was right after I finished residency.
Wow. How long is culinary school?
I did it in a year. It depends on what kind of program you do. I went to Institute of Culinary Education in New York, and I did culinary classes 3 nights a week. And then I worked in the ER the rest of the time. I had a very cool director at the time who let me go down to halftime for 1 year while I did school. So I did school at night, ER during the day.
Wow.
Yeah. And I would bring all my food in for my residents and stuff, all the leftovers. So they loved me. I was very popular.
That was a smart director. He's like, we can get Sonali to go to school, and we will get the benefits from it.
Yeah.
But you applied that the cooking show while you were in residency then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm just mind blown.
I know, right? That's great.
Yeah.
I know.
I have to ask, was there a sense of sometimes I find personally too, like, did you feel like there was things about medicine during your residency or what you were seeing in your patient populations that, or just the job feeling of day in, day out doing the same things, even though you have variety and emergency medicine, did you find that there was things about like frustrations about things or a staleness that made you eager to, not just because you like food, but just made you eager to do something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, definitely. So first of all, the reason I got into cooking was just to de-stress, basically, because, emergency medicine residency, super tough. I mean, just seeing like really, really sick patients every day. And in the beginning, it takes a while, obviously, to get used to it. And I would just come home and I found it very relaxing and therapeutic to be sitting there and like chopping an onion and, in the kitchen, just cooking and just totally forgetting about work, basically. But then like later on, exactly what you're asking about. Basically, I started after working in the ER for several years, I started getting really frustrated at times that we would be seeing all these patients, coming in with heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, all these things like uncontrollable hypertension, diabetes, things that, a lot of times could be controlled or prevented by, diet and exercise and things like that. So I started doing my own research into like how we can prevent diseases, before they start, and nutrition, because we really don't get a lot of nutrition education in medical school, right? So I took a bunch of online courses, and things like that. And that's basically when I started to kind of change my blog, The Foodie Physician, because at first it started off as just a fun way for me to share like recipes I was cooking and things like that. But then after a while, I was like, I want to bring like more of like the medical doctor aspect into this blog. And I started focusing on like, recipes and ways that we can use diet to kind of prevent these diseases before they begin. And that definitely started because of just seeing the same things over and over and over again in the ER. And a lot of times we don't have time to talk, we're in such a rush in the ER. We don't have time to talk to people and counsel them about things rather than just, it's a lot faster to just write a prescription for someone's blood pressure or for someone's sugar or something like that. But I do try, to take the time to talk to people about other ways that they can prevent these things.
Sure.
Have you ever been shocked when you were in actually in the ER and you're talking and you're trying to introduce these topics of what people, I'm going to say this, what they think they know about nutrition?
Definitely.
Just like sort of some misconceptions in there. And the reason I bring this up is when I was doing pain, and I would have patients come in and I would actually spend the time to ask them about their diet. I was shocked at what people thought was healthy.
Right.
So I'm kind of with the population that's coming in the ER and in heavy utilization. What have your experiences been there?
No, you're like, I 100% agree with you, because I've never had one person tell me that they don't eat healthy. I ask them about their diet, like, how's your diet? Like, everybody says they eat well. And then I'll be like, what does that mean? Like, how about like how much salt are you using? For example, like sodium, like, do you eat a lot of salty food, things like that. And almost everybody always says, oh no, I don't eat a lot of salt. I never use a salt shaker to put salt in my food. And I'm like, well, it's not the salt that's in the salt shaker. It's all the salt in the processed food and the fast food that you're eating. That same person will say that they are eating, whatever, fast food or grabbing breakfast at McDonald's every morning or packaged mac and cheese, canned soups, all these things that have a ton of salt, restaurant food. But yeah, people, I totally agree with you. People, have very different, ideas of what they think is healthy, for sure.
Yeah, the belief versus the reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Always in alignment.
Well, I think that's a great point, though, because so much in medicine, we have a tendency to, we're frustrated, we're overworked, we're time crunched, and in the worst scenarios, it starts to victim blaming, right? People come, well, why, if this person just did this, why are they in my ER, or why are they in surgery and this person's a mess? And it's just, it's when you actually spend the time to ask the question, it's really hard to say, well, this person's in these straits because they just aren't aware. Like, how is that? I don't know. How is that right when we're just saying, well, they don't know. Someone doesn't know.
Yeah. And it's hard because so the typical patient is someone like who comes into the ER in their, say, like mid 40s, starting to gain a little weight around the middle, cholesterol starting to creep up, sugar starting to creep up, blood pressure starting to creep up, and a lot of people will come in and want like medication and stuff like that, which first of all, in the ER, we're usually not trying to start people on medications because we're not their primary care doctor, although a lot of people think it ends up being like that. So, it's a lot easier or quicker to just write prescriptions and whatever. But, imagine if you had a doctor that, actually was maybe trained in nutrition and could actually tell you, what, how about for the next 6 months, you try to do this, this, and this with your diet, try to increase your exercise, and not just like say that, because a lot of people say, oh, lose 10, 15 pounds and come back, actually show or tell people how to do it, give them recipes. Even perhaps have cooking classes or something they could do with their patients, and then, like a lot of people, that's what I would love to be able to do, basically, but it takes work. That's the other thing. It's not that easy to do it, and it takes time and it takes work. So, and a lot of times people want like something faster, faster results.
Yeah.
But,
The reality. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I was saying if you really care and you want to make an impact, it takes time.
Yeah.
It takes all the energy, which is not what the system tends to give you in the emergency room, for sure.
I know. So I was going to say that I actually, because I'm the kind of person that always has to be doing something new, I just enrolled in this new program. It's through Tulane University. Yeah. It's called culinary medicine. It's actually this program that Tulane started. It's for health, not just doctors, like any healthcare professionals, but basically at the end of it, I'm going to be a culinary medicine specialist, but yeah, Tulane, like their medical school, they started teaching they built a big test kitchen at their medical school. I went there for a conference once. It's very cool. It's a professional kitchen, and they actually teach their medical students how to cook healthy food. So their students take like electives, like cooking classes, and how to make teach them about Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet and all these other things. And then the thinking is that if they know how to cook healthy, then they can instruct their patients on how to do this. And people are even opening up like test kitchens in their offices and things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I would love to do one day. That being an ER doctor, I don't have an office, so it's hard for me to like reach people. But hopefully one day I would love to be able to do like Zoom cooking classes online and things like that.
Very exciting.
In the ER, when you're juggling all these different things, have you found that physician training, and maybe even specifically your ER training, has that influenced how you cook, like the process of cooking itself?
Maybe in the sense that multitasking, honestly, because I'm in the ER, you do have to juggle like a million things at the same time, and it's, I'm a mom. I've got two young kids. I have an 8-year-old, but we also have a 2.5-year-old. So trying to cook in the kitchen while juggling them. And I'm usually a lot of times cooking multiple things at the same time because I'm doing recipes for my blog that we're trying to photograph. I'm also, cooking dinner. But yeah, just in that sense, I would say from the ER, we have to learn how to like juggle and multitask. So that definitely comes in handy. And my knife skills. Yeah.
Knife skills. Well, and that's just interesting to me because it sounds really appropriate. You focus on this multitask. I can't even imagine cooking multiple meals at the same time because my brain doesn't work that way.
Right.
But I'm actually very conscious about how anesthesia has influenced how I cook.
Yeah.
Because I cook just like how I would prep my room, meaning I keep it clean. I do this, I do step by step. I have everything laid out, the missing place thing, but then I'm cleaning as I go, just like I would be on my anesthesia cart.
That's so interesting.
And then Janet, my wife, who's also a physician and Sonali knows, does not cook like me at all. So like she does not follow that process. So I might have to do this new thing and ask every guest if they cook, like, how does your specialty influence this?
Yeah. That's really interesting. I think that's really interesting, actually. Yeah. And they do teach you that in culinary school, like obviously sanitation is that's like the most important thing, the first thing you learn, and to clean your station as you go. But so I remember some of my classmates, it would look like a bomb went off in their area, because it's just a total mess, like everything on the floor and everything. So that's funny. I'm more towards your end, but yeah, it's just, I'm always like juggling a million different things in the kitchen.
And this is going to sound horrible. Now I'm really curious about your parents, because you got a pathologist and anesthesiologist. Go and ask your parents, because you said they cook all the time. Like, do they cook differently? And what is the pathology influence on culinary arts? But
I don't want to know, I guess. My parents are very, they're great cooks, but they do not measure or write down anything, because for years I've been trying to get their, I don't cook a lot of traditional Indian food, which is what I grew up eating. So I want to get their recipes, and I want to have them for my kids and for future generations. And they do not measure anything. It's like impossible to get a recipe for them, but they work well together. They cook well in the kitchen together. Actually, that's their dynamic.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. You could have a course on your cooking style.
Yeah.
You
could do some kind of course, like how to adapt the benefits of certain cooking styles, or like changing your cooking styles.
Yeah.
Multitasking in the kitchen with the Foodie Physician.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, Sonali, of course, on the Change Physician podcast. And thank you for all of you listening. If you don't know what the Change Physician is all about, you can go to thechangephysician.com and join a community there, whether you're a physician or a physician ally. We'd love to see you. Of course, you can check out Instagram, where we release some posts on what our recent episodes are. And of course, YouTube, you can see the video versions of our podcasts and all the podcasts on all the major venues. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.
Stay well, folks.